Hello and welcome back to the kitchen. Today we are making my all-time favorite barbecue sauce because barbecue sauce, I mean, you can't live without it, can you? If you can, kudos to you, but I really can't because it goes on everything. It goes on roasts that I'm cooking, it goes on sandwiches, it goes on French fries, you name it, it goes. It is the ultimate sauce. So today I am going to make with you my all-time favorite, and it's from the Ball Book of Home Canning. It's called Paw Bywater barbecue sauce, and it is out of this world. Are you ready? Let's get saucing. So this barbecue sauce has got it all. It's got tang, it's got heat, it's got sweet. It's really, as far as I'm concerned, the best one out there. So what we're gonna do, it's pretty simple to put together, and bonus, this is a canning recipe. It is a safe and tested canning recipe. So this is a hot water bath recipe. I'm gonna use my steam canner at the end to preserve it, and I'll show you how that works. But first, we've gotta get the sauce on the go because it needs to simmer for about 20 minutes for everything to come together and to kind of thicken and incorporate and get saucy. So first thing we're gonna do is we are going to get together some of the dry ingredients. The first ingredient is 2.5 cups of packed brown sugar. So I've got that here. Next thing we're gonna add is 3 tablespoons of kosher salt. Kosher salt is awesome in canned items that you're doing at home. It's not recommended to use table salt when you're canning, so kosher salt is fantastic. After the kosher salt, we are looking at 3 tablespoons of garlic powder. Followed by 3 tablespoons of onion powder. Are you sensing a theme here? Because there's kind of a theme here. Basically, for almost all of the dry ingredients, when it comes to the spices, we're looking at 3 tablespoons of measurement. All right, we've got the onion powder in. Now we're adding in the dry mustard. And it feels kind of lumpy, guys, so this could be fun to try to get out. Oh, it's not as bad as I thought. Awesome. 1, 2, and 3. We're gonna follow this up with 1 tablespoon of black pepper. There we go. After the pepper, now we're moving into teaspoon measurements. So we need 2 teaspoons of paprika. Now you can use a regular paprika, but me, I love a good smoked paprika, so that's what I'm using. Especially when it comes to barbecue sauce, adding that nice little smoky element is awesome. Now we're gonna add 2 teaspoons of cayenne. This is where we start to bring the heat, guys. All right, cayenne is in. Now we're adding a 1/2 teaspoon of chili powder. There you have it. These are the dry ingredients. So what I like to do is kind of see if you can mix them up. And actually my brown sugar is pretty hard, so I'm gonna grab this spoon and just kind of mix it together gently. It's all right that the brown sugar's a little bit lumpy. It's all gonna come together in the sauce. All right, so we're just gonna keep on getting this a little bit mixed together. It's not perfect, but we don't really need it to be perfect at this point. So, cool beans, we're gonna put it aside. We're gonna start adding the wet ingredients, and I'm just gonna put them all in the pot. When I've got all the wet ingredients in the pot, then we're gonna put in those dry ingredients. Are you ready? Here we go. First thing you need is 8 cups of ketchup. And you'll wanna look for a ketchup that doesn't have a whole like thickeners and starches to it. Canning has some specific rules when it comes to thickeners and starches. So I am using the French's ketchup. And I'm gonna try not to knock everything over. I've measured my 8 cups of ketchup already, because do you wanna watch me do this? Probably not, right? All right, 8 cups of ketchup are in. Now I'm adding 2 cups of water, and apparently I can't measure. That was not quite 2 cups. After the 2 cups of water, we need 1 1/4 cups of apple cider vinegar. Make sure that your apple cider vinegar is a 5% minimum acidity. That's really important. When we're water bath canning and canning in general, the acidity of a product is super important to the safety and the viability of it on your shelf. Look, it's brand spanking new. Just for you. All right, 1 1/4 cups. And that is in. Next, we need to add in our 3/4 of a cup of apple cider. I'm using a fresh apple cider from a local orchard called Bellevaux's Orchard. I love their cider, it's my favorite. And I use it for all kinds of things, but it makes an incredible apple cider jelly as well. Chances are good that unless my family finds this, that's what I'll be doing with the rest of it. After we've got the apple cider in there, we're gonna add 1/3 of a cup of honey, which I have already measured out here. After the honey, we're adding in 1/4 of a cup of Dijon mustard. Now, normally I have a grainy Dijon handy, but I don't today, so we're gonna just go with the French's. Apparently we're on a theme. And apparently it's gonna take a minute. Lord Almighty, that took forever for me to measure this Dijon mustard. So here we go. Let's just pop it in. Awesome. We've got the mustard in. After the mustard, we need 2½ teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce. We're gonna follow that up by 2 tablespoons of bottled lemon juice. Or in this case, maybe slightly more than 2 tablespoons. It's okay to add a little more acid. It's definitely not okay to take acid away. So don't look at this recipe and go, oh, I really don't like the vinegar or I don't like the lemon juice. It has been tested for safety for this reason, so make sure that you add those things in. Trust me, this recipe is worth it. It's so delicious. Last but not least, we need 1 tablespoon of fermented hot sauce. Now I make my own fermented hot sauce, and it's pretty stinking good. And I'm out of clean tablespoons, so I'm gonna use 2 teaspoons. And then I'm apparently gonna get some on me. The joys of cooking, right? All right, so these are our wet ingredients. I'm using my whisk to just kind of whisk them together a little bit. And now I'm gonna add in those dry ingredients that we measured up earlier. There we go, gonna whisk it all together. Now the next step is to pop this on the burner. We're gonna wanna bring it up to a high heat just until it starts to boil, and then turn it down to a simmer. And we're gonna let it simmer for about 20 to 30 minutes. All right, so let's get ready to put this stuff on the stove. All right, so we are pretty much where we want it. We want it to start looking like this. Now I'm going to turn the temperature down to just above low. So I want this to simmer for the next 20 minutes or so. But now that it's nice and warm and starting to come to that slow boil, everything is dissolving nicely, everything is mixing nicely, and this barbecue sauce is happening. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go and get my jars, get them washed up and ready to go, prep my station for filling for when this is done, and I'm gonna get my steam canner out because that's how I'm processing these today. Another thing I do while I am waiting for this barbecue sauce to finish simmering for about 20 to 30 minutes is I start getting my steam canner ready to go. So what I love about a steam canner is it uses a lot less water than a traditional water bath canner. You just fill up the water to about the level of where the rack is. So it takes a lot less time to heat up. It takes a lot less time to use. What I like to do is I like to put this just above minimum. I just want to warm it up a little bit because I'm going to be putting hot barbecue sauce into warm jars, and I don't want to put them into a cold container and then heat it up really quickly because that can cause thermal shock. So at this point, I'm just going to put the lid . There, so the lid's on my steam canner, and we're just gonna let this be for the next few minutes and warm up just slightly while we wait for the barbecue sauce to have its simmer time. Okay, so our sauce is simmered for the last 30 minutes. We are ready to get this in jars so that we can, in this case, steam can it. You can either hot water bath can recipe or steam can it. I'm using my steam canner because I love it. It takes so much less water, it takes so much less time, so that's what I'm doing. Got all of my jars ready. They were washed. I've got the rest of them in the sink full of hot water to keep them nice and warm. And now, using my canning funnel, I'm just gonna go ahead. I like to put this as close to the pot as possible so I don't lose any of this incredible barbecue sauce along the way. Give it a stir and start to fill. This recipe calls for a 1/2 inch headspace, which is pretty standard for things like barbecue sauce. Now, let's just give you a quick idea about what a 1/2 inch headspace looks like. If you've got a handy dandy tool, which a lot of times we do have, then you'll know. But if you don't, all you have to do is look at the rings on the jar. The very top one here, where it starts, that's a 1/4 inch, and the one underneath it is a 1/2 inch. So if you need to eyeball it, then you know, then that's how you can do it. At this point, it's a good idea to take a straw, a chopstick, a debubbling tool of some sort, and just run it along the inside of the jar to break up any air bubbles that might be hiding in here. Now, an important tip is to grab a piece of paper towel and dip it in a little bit of vinegar, just like that, and then wipe the rim. After doing all of this hard work, you don't want anything to get between your lid and your jar, causing it not to seal. We want a great sealer rate on this barbecue sauce, because we're gonna pop this on the shelf until we need it when we're done. Now I've got my nice, clean, warm lid. You don't need to simmer the lids anymore, but they do need to be nice and clean. And now I'm just gonna pop on the ring. You just turn it until it's just a little bit more than finger tight. Done. This one is going to be ready to put in the canner. All right, let's get moving and get the other ones finished. Here we go, guys. I got 7 pints of the barbecue sauce with just a slight bit left over, enough for supper. And now what I'm doing is I have put them all in my steam canner. As you can see, they're nice and snug to each other. And I am going to put the lid on the steam canner. And I'll show you what we're looking for here. So here's the gauge. And of course you're getting a reflection from my overhead light, but I'm turning my burner on to max. And depending on what your altitude is it's going to determine what you're looking for. So I'm gonna wait for this needle to go right up to this very dark green one on the outside. That's perfect for my altitude. Once that needle hits that spot, then I can start timing this. And these process for 15 minutes. So once the needle hits there, I can hit my timer for 15 minutes. So let's get going. It's a steamy place here, but hopefully you can see that the needle has reached that dark green on the outside. That means that I am right where I need to be for the steam, for the temperature. So now I can set my timer. This barbecue sauce processes for 15 minutes. So I'm gonna pop that timer on now. All right, guys, so 15 minutes in the steam bath canner. And now I've let it sit for 5 minutes. I took the lid off just because what's the point of you watching me do that? And now I'm gonna take them out of the steam canner. Here we go. When you're taking things out of the canner, you want to try to keep your arm as straight as you can towards you. One of my instructors, when I took the Master Food Preserver course, said, think of your arm like a crane. Don't bend it, don't shake it around. And I was like, ooh, and that has stuck with me ever since. And here we go. That is the last one. So I got a yield of 7 pints. Normally it's around 6-ish, so sometimes life is weird and you end up with more. It's gonna be a-okay. And they're already pinging. So the big thing now is to leave them on the counter undisturbed for the next 24 hours. They can take up to 24 hours to seal, guys. So leave them for that long. Don't touch them, don't jiggle them, don't take the rings off. After that 24-hour period, you should be able to see that the indentation in your lid is down, and then you can take the rings off. If you can lift your jar up by just the lid, then you've got an awesome seal. Give them a good wash in some hot soapy water just in case something ended up on the outside of your jar. Dry them off, and then you can label them and put them away for a barbecue day. Trust me on this one. I'm even out of spoons. This is gonna be one of your favorite barbecue sauces of all time. And if you find it just a little bit too hot for your taste buds, you can dial back a little bit of the spice if you want to. I'm gonna have to try it with a fork. This is spicy and it is sweet and it's got a kick. God almighty, it's so, so good. Papa Bywater barbecue sauce from the Ball book of home canning and preserving. Get the book. You're gonna love this recipe. You're gonna love all the other recipes in there as well. And they've all been tested for safety. So you know that you're doing it right and that you are preserving as safely as you can for your family and your friends. All right, 24 hours later, we are ready to get these guys ready for the pantry. So I've left them sit undisturbed for 24 hours. Now I'm gonna show you how I check the seals and get them ready for their bubble bath. It's a really good idea to wash all of your jars before you put them away, because sometimes things will siphon or what have you. You'll have something on the outside of the jar and you don't want to see, mold or gross stuff when you come back to get it later, right? So here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna grab your jar and remove the ring. I'm just gonna throw the ring right in the sink. You should be able to, first of all, see that there's like a button on most of these lids. It should be concave, so you can be able to see that. But what you should also be able to do is you should also be able to grab the lid, just the lid in your fingers, and lift the jar without that seal coming off. When you do that, you know you've got a fabulous seal. Check this out. So, grab it just by the lid, lift, perfect. We've got an awesome seal. So now I'm gonna go and give these guys their little bubble bath before they go away. Okay guys, so they have been washed. They have been labeled. I've removed the rings for storage because, well, there's a variety of reasons why you can remove the rings for storage. We'll touch on that in just a sec. Why do I remove the rings before I put my canned products in the pantry. There's a variety of reasons why people like to do that. The reason why I do it is because, well, you know what? This way you can reuse the rings over and over again, and you don't have to buy rings every time you buy lids. When you can as much as I do, that is super helpful. So that's just one reason. Another reason is if you leave the lids on and you don't get to it right away, sometimes you come back and they're rusted right onto the jar. It's really hard to get off. Then you end up with like rusty rings around the jars themselves. It's kind of gross. So there's another reason for you. Plus it ruins your ring. You can't reuse it. The biggest reason a lot of people don't put the rings on for storage is because it's believed that if something has gone wrong in your product, it will eventually unseal itself in some cases. So there is a school of thought that says if you leave the ring on and it goes to unseal itself, the pressure of the ring can create what's called a false seal. So it'll reseal itself even though it shouldn't because something's gone funky in there. So really, those are all great reasons to remove the rings prior to storage. Make sure that you label it. Make sure that you put the date on it. I know that when you're sometimes thinking, I'll know what that is. 6 months from now, you might not. Although I don't think this Pawpaw Bywater barbecue sauce is gonna last 6 months, so that's a-okay for me. Thanks so much for being here and hanging out with me while I did some canning. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this video, please make sure that you subscribe to my channel. There's more to come from the kitchen. I'm really looking forward to sharing all the fun things that I like to do in here with you, and hopefully, we can teach each other something new. Enjoy.